So here we are. The woman who was erased at her own son's wedding now sits at the head of her own table, not because they gave her permission, but because she chose herself. I was humiliated, betrayed, discarded. But out of that silence, I built something louder than applause. I built a life, a legacy, a story that no one else can erase. And here's what I want you to take with you. You can give everything, your money, your love, your whole soul, and still be treated like you're invisible. But invisibility is a lie. Your worth is not decided by the seat they give you or the speeches they forget to write. Your worth is decided by the moment you stand up, smile, and say, "I choose myself." Because in the end, love is powerful, but boundaries? Boundaries are sacred. And if this story found you today, maybe it's because you, too, are ready to stop waiting for permission to matter. Maybe you, too, are ready to take your seat at the head of your own table. Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell me where in the world are you watching from, because your story matters. They say life changes in the blink of an eye. Sometimes it's a car accident, a sudden illness, or a betrayal you never saw coming. For me, it was a phone call that turned my world upside down and made me question everything I thought I knew about the woman living under my roof. It started like any other quiet morning in my Phoenix home. My older son, Steven, had already left for work, always the early bird, briefcase in hand, his mind full of blueprints and deadlines. The house was peaceful. My grandson, little Matthew, had been scooped up by the yellow school bus, his laughter still echoing faintly in the hallway. And Araceli, my daughter-in-law, Steven's wife, had just called down from upstairs in that soft, careful voice of hers. "Mom, I'm going to take a quick shower." I smiled at the sound of it, that tender familiarity I'd grown so used to. "Of course, honey," I answered, nodding to myself as I turned back to the sink. The smell of dish soap and warm water filled the kitchen as I rinsed the last plate. My apron was still damp from splashes when the landline rang. I reached for the receiver, expecting maybe a neighbor, maybe a telemarketer. Instead, it was my younger son. "Hi, Mom." Ivan's cheerful voice crackled through the line, as warm and bright as a morning sunbeam. My heart lifted instantly. Ivan, my pride and joy. The boy who had dreamed of flying since he was barely tall enough to reach the window, now a young co-pilot living that very dream. Every call from him felt like a gift. We talked about his layover, about how his flights were going. His laugh filled me with ease. Until it didn't, because then his voice dropped. "Mom, something weird is happening." There was a pause, heavy enough to stop me mid-step. I leaned on the counter, the phone pressed closer to my ear. "What is it, honey?" He hesitated, and when he finally spoke, his words came slowly, cautiously, as though he was afraid they might not make sense. "Mom, my sister-in-law is at the house, isn't she?" My eyebrows knitted together. What kind of question was that? I glanced toward the staircase. I could still hear the faint rush of water upstairs. "Of course she is," I replied with certainty. "Araceli is here. She just went to shower a few minutes ago." Silence, not the casual kind, the heavy kind, the kind that makes your stomach twist. Then Ivan's voice returned, firmer this time. "That's impossible." I frowned, pressing the receiver tighter. "What do you mean impossible?" "Because I have her passport in my hand," he whispered. "She just boarded my flight." To France, the dish towel slipped from my hand and landed on the floor. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it away. "You must have made a mistake, sweetheart." "Maybe it just looks like her. Araceli's right here in this house." But Ivan didn't laugh. He didn't even chuckle. His voice sharpened, a tone I had never heard from my gentle son before. "Mom, I'm staring at her right now. She's sitting in first class. With a man. They're close. Like a couple." A chill ran down my spine so fast it made me dizzy. My knees buckled and I had to grip the edge of the counter to steady myself. A couple? That was impossible. I had just spoken to Araceli upstairs. Before I could form another word, the sound of running water stopped. The pipes groaned. The bathroom door opened and then... Mom, who's on the phone. Her voice, sweet, familiar. From upstairs. My throat went dry. My pulse thundered in my ears. I turned away, my back pressed to the wall, trying to think. Just a friend, I muttered quickly, forcing my voice into something steady. On the line, Ivan's breathing grew heavier. Mom, I'm telling you, she's on this plane. I closed my eyes. My hands shook so violently, I almost dropped the phone. And in that moment, one question burned into me like fire. If Araceli was here with me, then who was that woman sitting beside a stranger, thousands of feet above the ground, pretending to be her? I hung up the phone with trembling hands, my chest tight, my head spinning. Ivan's words clung to me like shadows I couldn't shake off. She's sitting in first class with a man, like a couple. No matter how I tried to reason with myself, the truth felt impossible to escape. Because upstairs, footsteps echoed down the staircase. Araceli appeared. Her hair was damp, a towel draped loosely around her shoulders. She smiled, that familiar sweetness in her expression, as if nothing in the world was wrong. Mom, I'm going to the market later. Do you need any vegetables? I stared at her, my throat dry. She was real, flesh and blood, standing right in front of me. I forced a smile. Yes, honey. Bring some tomatoes if you can. She nodded, lifted her wicker basket, and walked out of the house. The gate creaked shut behind her, leaving me frozen in place. For years, I had trusted her. This young woman had walked into our family with grace, with warmth, with a smile that could light up a room. She had been a mother to Matthew, a partner to Stephen, a daughter-in-law I believed I could lean on. But now I felt like I was living inside a story I didn't recognize. I sank onto the couch, staring at the family photos on the wall, Stephen and Araceli on their wedding day, the proud smile on Stephen's face, the way she had leaned into him as though nothing in the world could break them apart. My grandson, a newborn in her arms, swaddled tight in a white blanket, and Ivan, my darling boy, beaming in his pilot's uniform the day he first took flight. They were memories carved into my heart, but suddenly they all felt fragile, blurred, like pictures smudged by time and deceit. I thought back to small moments I had brushed aside, Araceli's handwriting sometimes neat, sometimes sloppy, as if two different people had written the same list. Her moods, sometimes tender and patient, other times sharp and cold for reasons I couldn't understand. The way she carried things, one day in her right hand, another in her left. Little details I once explained away with excuses, but now each one was a puzzle piece clicking into place. Could I have been blind this whole time? The front door swung open and Matthew came bouncing in, his little backpack bouncing against his shoulders. His laughter was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Grandma," he chirped, throwing his arms around me. "Look what my teacher said today. I draw so well." He pulled out his notebook and flipped it open, showing me 2 pages. "Mom helped me yesterday. Look, her writing was so neat, but today she wrote with her other hand and it was all messy." I froze, staring at the pages. One neat, one crooked. I tried to smile. "Maybe she was just tired today, sweetheart." But Matthew frowned, his little brow furrowed. "Grandma, sometimes she hugs me really, really tight. And other days she doesn't even look at me. Why is Mom so weird?" His innocent words cut through me like a knife. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Collins from next door knocked on the gate. She returned a plate Araceli had given her. "Your daughter-in-law is so sweet," she said warmly, "but yesterday she handed me the plate with her left hand." "Didn't you once tell me she's right-handed?" I forced a smile. "Maybe she uses both." But inside, my heart sank deeper. Even the neighbors noticed. I thanked her politely, but as soon as she left, I collapsed back onto the couch. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Was I imagining this? Or was something far more sinister unfolding inside my own home? That evening, when Araceli returned from the market, she was cheerful. She placed her basket on the table, smiling softly. "I bought fish. I'll make the roasted fish you love tonight." Her voice was warm, but my eyes were locked on her hands. The left one cradled the basket. Always the left. At dinner, the family gathered as usual. Stephen talked about his work, exhausted but smiling. Matthew told stories from school, giggling over a silly drawing. Araceli sat quietly, adding comments here and there. To anyone else, it would have been the perfect picture of family life. But not for me. Not with Ivan's words echoing in my head. Not with the memory of her damp hair, her sweet smile. When at that very moment, a woman with her face sat on a plane to France. I pressed my napkin to my lips, hiding the tremble. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm, because one truth had begun to sink in. The woman living in my house, the woman I had trusted as my daughter, might not be the woman I thought she was. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, every sound louder than my own heartbeat. I poured myself a cup of tea, but my hands trembled so much that half of it spilled onto the saucer. I couldn't silence Ivan's voice. "Mom, she's sitting in first class, right in front of me, with a man, like they're a couple." And yet I had heard her voice, soft as ever, coming from the upstairs bathroom. I had seen her damp hair, her smile. Two truths that could not exist at the same time. I stared at the table, its surface scarred with years of family dinners, homework, birthday cakes, and long nights of quiet prayers. For the first time, it felt foreign, unsafe. That's when I pulled out an old notebook from the drawer. Its cover was worn, its pages yellowed, but the spine still held together. It had once been for grocery lists and household reminders. Tonight, it became something else, my notebook of doubts. I opened to the first page and wrote with a shaky hand, 3 p.m. Araceli leaves for the market. 6 p.m. Returns with a different blouse. Claims she spilled something. The words sat heavy on the page. Writing them down made the suspicion real. I turned the page and kept going. Yesterday, sang Matthew to sleep, warm and gentle. Today, cold, distant. Did not sing. Each line cut deeper into my chest. I began to list more details, tiny things I had once ignored. The handwriting that shifted from neat to crooked. The way she carried her basket, sometimes right, sometimes left. Her moods, swinging wildly from tenderness to sharpness. I pressed harder with the pen until the ink almost tore the page. Am I imagining this? I whispered to myself. My voice sounded so small, so broken in the empty kitchen. The following days only gave me more to write. One evening, Matthew spilled his glass of water at dinner. I reached for a rag, laughing softly. "It's all right, sweetheart. Just be careful next time." But Araceli's eyes flashed cold. "Matthew, why are you so clumsy?" "Pay attention." Stephen looked at her in shock. "Araceli, it was an accident. He's just a child." She turned on him sharply. "You always defend him. You make me look like the villain." The table fell into silence. Matthew lowered his head, his little shoulders shaking. I hugged him close, feeling his tears soak into my blouse. That night, I opened the notebook again. At dinner, sharp words to Matthew, different from yesterday when she was affectionate. My hand shook as I wrote. Each sentence was like carving doubt into stone. The next morning, Matthew tugged at my sleeve while I was watering the garden. "Grandma, my mom is strange. Yesterday she helped me write with her right hand, but today she used her left. Why is she so different?" His innocent eyes searched mine for answers I couldn't give. I hugged him tightly. "She's just tired, sweetheart. Don't worry." But my throat was dry, my heart pounding. That night, I wrote again. Matthew noticed handwriting differences. Said Mom uses both hands. Innocent child. But he sees the truth. The notebook was filling fast, and then came the moment that nearly shattered me. One evening, Matthew ran into my room, his cheeks flushed from play. He buried his face in my lap and whispered, "Grandma, today my mom didn't hug me goodnight. But yesterday she did. Yesterday she even sang Cielito Lindo, the song you always sing to me." I froze. That song was mine. Only I had ever sung it to my boys when they were children. How would Araceli know it? Why one day and not the next? The pen felt heavy as I wrote the entry. Araceli sang Cielito Lindo. Where did she learn it? Why only some nights? I stared at the words until the ink blurred from my tears. The notebook wasn't just a collection of suspicions anymore. It was becoming a map. Each line pointed towards something I had been too afraid to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the notebook resting on the nightstand like a silent witness. And for the first time, I admitted a thought I had tried to bury. Maybe the woman in my house wasn't really Araceli at all. Saturday morning arrived heavy with silence. Stephen had left early for work, and Matthew was at a school event, his backpack bouncing behind him as he climbed onto the bus. That left me alone with Araceli. She came downstairs in a pale yellow floral dress, her hair neatly tied, her wicker basket in hand. She smiled softly. "Mom, I'm going to the market for a bit." "Do you need anything?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Some fresh tomatoes, please." She kissed my cheek lightly and walked out the door. The moment the gate closed, my heart pounded like a drum. For weeks, I had filled the notebook with doubts. Tonight, I told myself, the pages would no longer be enough. I needed answers. So I grabbed my old shawl, wrapped it around my shoulders, and slipped out of the house. I kept a distance, careful not to let her notice me. My hands trembled as I gripped the fence posts, moving from one shadow to the next. At first, everything seemed normal. Araceli walked down the familiar cobblestone street that led to the market. I nearly convinced myself that I was being paranoid, that I had let my fears spiral too far. But then, she turned left, not toward the market, not toward Mrs. Collins's street, but into a narrow alley I had never dared to enter. My steps slowed, my chest tightened. Why would she go there? The alley was lined with old houses, their paint peeling, their roofs patched with rusty tin, laundry hung on sagging lines fluttering faintly in the dry breeze. I hid behind a parked bicycle, watching her every move. She didn't hesitate. She walked quickly, basket swinging at her side. Then she stopped in front of a weathered wooden door at number 14. My breath caught. She knocked lightly, looking over her shoulder once, then slipped inside. The door shut behind her. I stood frozen. The world around me blurred, the buzzing of flies, the barking of a dog, the rattling of a cart. My focus was only on that door. What was my daughter-in-law doing in this alley? Who was she meeting? I wanted to run over and demand answers, to throw that door open and drag her home. But my knees weakened. My heart screamed, "Don't." Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever was behind that door was something I wasn't ready for. I turned and stumbled home, each step heavier than the last. When I finally pushed open the gate, my breath stopped. There she was, standing in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, wearing a crisp white blouse, not the yellow floral dress she had left in. I froze in the doorway. My lips trembled. Where did you go?" I whispered. She looked up calmly, her eyes sharp, cold. "Just to the market, Mom." "Why?" Her smile was soft, but her gaze pierced me. I swallowed hard. "What? What did you buy?" "Cilantro, fresh fish, tomatoes. I'm making the roasted fish you like tonight." Her voice was warm, sweet, as if nothing had happened, but my heart thundered in my chest. I forced a smile, pretending to tidy the table, but my mind screamed. The dress had changed. The basket was different. The time didn't add up. I excused myself, walking slowly to my room, pretending to search for something. In truth, I was escaping her eyes. Once alone, I collapsed onto the bed, clutching my chest. My thoughts spun. If she went into that alley in the yellow dress? Who was the woman standing in my kitchen now in a white blouse? That night, I tried to distract myself with my knitting. Matthew ran in, his cheeks red from playing outside. He hugged me tight. "Grandma," he sobbed, "Mom yelled at me just because I dropped a pencil." Yesterday she hugged me, but today she didn't even look at me. Tears burned my eyes. I stroked his hair. "Don't cry, sweetheart. She's just tired." But inside, my grandson's words cut me deeper than any knife. I opened my notebook once more. My hand trembled as I wrote, "Followed Araceli, entered alley, house at number 14, yellow dress, returned in white blouse minutes later." Impossible. Maybe not the same person. When I finished writing, I stared at the sentence for a long time. My heart raced. Not the same person. Could it be? Could there really be two of them? That night, I didn't sleep at all. My ceiling felt like it was pressing down on me, the notebook heavy on the nightstand beside me. By morning, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't run from this any longer. I had to go back to that alley. I had to knock on that door, and I had to see with my own eyes the truth I was too afraid to face. The next morning, I wrapped my shawl tightly around my shoulders and left the house with trembling hands. I clutched the family photo from the living room, the one where Stephen, Araceli, and Matthew were smiling together. Somehow, I felt I might need it. The sun was already sharp, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. My feet carried me back to the alley, back to the peeling walls and sagging laundry lines. My heart hammered with every step. The closer I got to the weathered wooden door of number 14, the louder it became, like a warning drum in my chest. I paused in front of the house, staring at the wilted daisy pot on the window ledge. My fingers trembled as I raised my hand and knocked. The sound echoed too loud, too final. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door creaked open, and there she was. I froze. It was Araceli. At least, it looked like her. Same dark hair, same oval face, same brown eyes. But this woman's expression wasn't polished or calm. Her lips trembled, her hands shook as she clutched a rag against her chest. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Senora Brooks," she whispered. Her voice was softer, shakier. I gripped the photo in my hand like a shield. "Araceli? What is this? Why are you here?" Before she could slam the door, another voice came from inside a woman's voice, firm yet gentle. "Isadora, stop hiding. She deserves to know Isadora." The name sliced through the air like lightning. The trembling woman lowered her head, stepped aside, and let me in. I entered cautiously. The smell of disinfectant and boiled beans lingered in the small, dimly lit room. The floor was cracked concrete, the furniture old and patched. In the corner, a frail man lay coughing on a cot, his chest rising and falling with effort. A younger woman stepped forward, wiping her hands on an apron. Her sharp eyes studied me, but her voice was kind. "My name is Lucy. I live here with Isadora. Please sit down." I sat on a rickety wooden chair, my knees weak. My eyes darted between the two women, the one who looked exactly like my daughter-in-law and the one speaking for her. My throat tightened. "Explain this." Right now, Isadora's eyes filled with tears. Her voice came in fragments. "I'm not Araceli. My name is Isadora. Araceli paid me to pretend to be her sometimes, to stay in the house, to fool you." The room tilted around me. My breath caught in my chest. To fool me? For what? Why would she do that? Lucy spoke, steady and clear, like someone who had rehearsed this moment. Because Isadora and Araceli met years ago, and they realized they looked exactly alike. Almost like twins. Araceli offered money, good money. Isadora's parents are very sick. She thought she had no choice. Isadora shook her head desperately, clutching the rag tighter. I never wanted to hurt anyone. She just said, "Stay with Matthew, run errands, act sweet. No one will notice." She paid me enough for medicine. For food, I agreed. I stared at her, my heart in shreds. The notebook's pages, Matthew's words, Ivan's call, all of it slammed into place. The handwriting changes, the mood swings, the moments that didn't add up. My voice cracked. "Why didn't you stop? Why didn't you say no?" Her tears spilled freely now. Because my father, he would die without the medicine. I told myself it was harmless. I didn't know she had another life. Lucy leaned closer, her tone sharp. "I've seen her. Araceli. She wasn't just disappearing for shopping trips. She's been with a man, a wealthy man. I even heard his name once, Charles Thompson. She called him Honey." My stomach dropped. Ivan's words echoed in my ears. "She's in first class next to a rich man." The room spun. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the photo. Isadora buried her face in her hands. "I'm so sorry. I never knew it was this deep. I thought I was helping her, helping my parents. I didn't know she was betraying your family." I looked at her closely. Same face, same eyes, yet different, softer, sadder, honest. "Isadora," I whispered, my voice trembling, "who are you really? Why do you look so much like Araceli?" Her shoulders shook as she sobbed. "I don't know. I was adopted. My parents always told me I wasn't theirs by blood. I never knew who my real family was." Lucy stepped in again, her tone careful but heavy. "Mrs. Brooks, there's something else." Years ago, Isadora's adoptive mother told me she was born in the same hospital the same day as Araceli. The truth may be that they aren't just look-alikes. They may be twins. The word thundered in my chest. Twins. I clutched the photo tighter, my knuckles white. My knees felt weak, my whole world shifting under me. Twins. One raised in comfort, the other left behind. And now fate had brought them both into my family. My voice cracked as I whispered, half to myself, half to them. So all this time, I wasn't imagining things. There were two of you. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the frail man coughing in the corner. I stood, pressing my hand to my chest to steady the storm inside me. My life, my family, wasn't what I thought it was, and the truth, now revealed, was only the beginning of a much darker story. The day of the confrontation felt heavier than any storm I had ever lived through. I woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding like a drum. I knew that tonight would change everything. There would be no more pretending, no more silence. By late afternoon, I set the dining room table as if preparing for a holiday. A crisp white tablecloth covered the wood, candles flickered softly, and I cooked the dishes my family loved most. Stephen's favorite chili, Matthew's roasted fish, even the cornbread Ivan always asked for when he was home. But it wasn't a celebration, it was Judgment Day. Stephen came home first, his shirt wrinkled from a long day at the firm. He looked around, surprised. "Mom, what's all this? Are we celebrating something?" I forced a smile. "Just a family dinner, honey. Sit down. We'll all eat together tonight." A few minutes later, Araceli walked in, wearing her pale blue dress, her smile practiced and delicate. She kissed Matthew on the head, smoothed Stephen's shoulder, and gave me that sweet, polite glance that once fooled me completely. But tonight, my heart felt steel behind my ribs. I wasn't fooled anymore. As we sat down, the air filled with Matthew's cheerful chatter. He waved his fork as he told us about school. Stephen chuckled, tired but attentive. Araceli nodded along, her eyes calm, but her hand trembled slightly as she lifted her spoon. That was when the knock came at the door. Stephen frowned. "Who else is coming?" I swallowed hard. My voice was steady, though inside I was trembling. "Someone who belongs here tonight." The door creaked open and Ivan stepped in, still in his pilot's uniform, tall and serious. But it wasn't just him. Behind him stood Isadora. The room froze. Matthew gasped, his fork clattering onto his plate. His innocent eyes darted between Araceli and the woman who looked exactly like her. "Mom, why are there two of you?" Stephen's face drained of color. His hand fell from the table as though he'd been struck. Araceli shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the floor. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp and high. I stood slowly, gripping the edge of the table for strength. "It's the truth, Araceli." Tonight, we stopped pretending Stephen looked at me, then at Isadora, then back to his wife. "Mom, what's going on?" I drew a breath that felt like it carried years of silence. "Ivan saw her, your wife, on a flight to France." He held her passport in his hands. At the same time, she was here, in this house. I thought I was losing my mind, but I wasn't, because the woman on that flight was Araceli, and the woman in this house was her twin, Isadora. The word twin shattered the air like glass. Araceli's lips trembled. "That's insane. She's lying. She made this up to humiliate me." But Ivan stepped forward, placing a stack of papers on the table with a thud. "These are the records, Araceli. Your electronic passport logs. France. First-class ticket. Exact timestamp. You can't be in two places at once." Stephen stared at the papers, his chest rising and falling like he couldn't catch his breath. "Araceli, tell me this isn't true." Araceli's eyes darted between all of us. For a moment, she seemed to falter, but then her mask hardened. Her voice rose with fury. "Yes, it's true. I was in France. I was with Charles. He gives me everything you can't, Stephen. I'm tired of this pathetic little life of this house, this family. I deserve more." The words struck like knives. Stephen staggered back, his hand gripping the table to keep from collapsing. Matthew's small voice broke through the silence, trembling and innocent. "Grandma, why is my mom so mean today? Yesterday she was nice. Today, she's not my mom anymore." Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to stay strong. I reached out, pulling Matthew into my arms. His tiny body shook against me as he sobbed. Stephen's voice finally came, low and raw. "Araceli, after everything. This is who you are?" She sneered, her mask slipping into cold disdain. "Yes, and I don't regret it." That was when Isadora stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "Sister, you didn't have to hurt them. I did what you asked. I stayed silent. I thought I was helping. But this? Destroying your family? Throwing away Matthew? How could you?" Araceli's eyes flared with rage. "You think you're better than me? You're nothing. Just the shadow I paid to cover for me." Her words stung the air. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Araceli turned sharply, grabbed her purse, and stormed out the door. The slam echoed through the house like thunder. The room fell into silence. Stephen collapsed into his chair, his head in his hands. Matthew cried quietly in my arms. Ivan's jaw was set, his eyes dark with anger. And Isadora stood trembling, her tears falling silently onto the floor. I lifted my chin, my voice breaking, but steady. The lies are over. The truth is here. And though it hurts, it's better than living blind. That night, we sat at the table long after the food had gone cold. No one said much, but deep down, we all knew. The woman we had welcomed into our home, trusted with our hearts, had betrayed us. And yet, in that betrayal, something new had begun. Because now, we weren't blind anymore. We saw the truth, and the real story of our family was just beginning. The days after the confrontation felt like walking through ashes after a fire. The house was quiet, not with peace, but with the kind of silence that follows destruction. Araceli had left slamming the door on her marriage, her child, and the family that had trusted her. Stephen barely spoke. He buried himself in his architectural drawings, but I could see the hollow in his eyes, the way his hands lingered too long over a blueprint, as though he was staring at nothing at all. Matthew, Sweet little Matthew clung to me at night, whispering, "Grandma, I don't want the mean mommy to come back. I want the nice one." His words cut me deeper than anything Araceli had said. And then there was Isadora. She didn't disappear into the shadows once the truth came out. Instead, she showed up at our door each morning, her hands carrying warm food, her heart carrying something far heavier. She played with Matthew, helped him with homework, sang him to sleep when his father was too tired to even lift his head. Slowly, the boy's tears gave way to laughter again. He started calling her Auntie at first, but one evening, I overheard him whisper while she tucked him in, "Good night, Mom." Isadora froze, her hand trembling on his blanket, but she didn't correct him. She just kissed his forehead, tears slipping down her cheeks. I stood in the doorway, my heart breaking and healing at the same time. Stephen noticed too. For weeks, he said nothing. But one night, he called me into the living room. He stood there with a small ring clutched in his hand, his voice shaky but determined. Isadora sat beside him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom," Stephen said, "I can't waste any more time." Isadora brought light back into this house. She gave Matthew a mother's love when his own turned her back. I don't just want her here, I need her here. For me, for my son, for all of us. Then he turned to her, kneeling in front of the couch. "Isadora, I know you've been through pain, and I know this isn't how you imagined life. But will you marry me? Will you be Matthew's mother? Not by mistake, not by accident, but by choice?" The room held its breath. Isadora covered her mouth with her hands, her tears spilling freely. She looked at me as if asking for permission. I walked forward, placed my hand on hers, and whispered, "Yes, honey. You belong here. You always have." She sobbed and nodded, and Stephen slipped the ring onto her finger. Matthew clapped his little hands, shouting with joy, "Now I have the nice mommy forever!" His innocence lit the room brighter than any chandelier ever could. The wedding came quickly. No grand hall, no chandeliers, no luxury. Just our backyard, roses tied to the fence, string lights glowing against the evening sky. Ivan came home from a flight just in time, standing proudly beside his brother as best man. Matthew wore a tiny suit, holding his father's hand with a grin that stretched ear to ear. As I watched Stephen and Isadora exchange vows, I felt the tears streaming down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of loss anymore. They were tears of renewal, of life giving us a second chance. Isadora wore a simple white dress, nothing extravagant, but the way Stephen looked at her, you'd think she was royalty. And the way Matthew leaned into her skirt, calling her Mom, I knew she had already become more than a bride. She was the missing piece we hadn't even known we needed. After the vows, as laughter filled the yard, I stood by the roses, remembering the night of Ivan's call, the alley, the lies, the betrayal. Back then, I thought my family was crumbling beyond repair. But here we were, standing in the light of a new beginning. Weeks turned into months, and the wounds slowly closed. Stephen found joy again, sketching late at night while Isadora placed a cup of tea by his side, kissing his forehead gently. Matthew no longer asked about the mean mommy. He only spoke of his real mommy, the one who hugged him tight, sang him to sleep, and never let go. And me? I found peace in the quiet. I tended to my roses. I cooked meals without the weight of secrets, and I listened to the laughter inside my house without fear it would be stolen again. One night, while sitting on the porch, I thought of my late husband, Raphael. His voice echoed in my memory. "The truth will set you free, Stella." At the time, I hadn't understood, but now I knew he was right. The truth had been painful, but it had cleared the shadows and given us something real, something worth holding on to. Araceli's betrayal had almost destroyed us, but in its ruins, we had built something stronger. A family not bound by lies, but by choice, love, and truth. That night, I whispered to the stars, we came full circle. And this time, the story is ours. And for the first time in years, my heart felt whole. And so, the truth came full circle. The lies that once poisoned our home gave birth to something new: honesty, strength, and love that could not be faked. Araceli chose betrayal, but in her shadow, Isadora gave us light. My grandson found a true mother. My son found a partner who cherished him. And I found peace, not in silence, but in truth. Maybe you're angry right now. Maybe you're heartbroken, or maybe you're relieved that justice found its way in the end. Whatever you feel, remember this: blood may connect us, but love is what truly makes us family. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell me, what would you have done if you discovered such a secret at your own table? Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They are mirrors. And sometimes they show us the strength we didn't know we had. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just change the way you see your own life.